I'm trying to understand, right? What I try to do is understand both the objective stuff, but what are people enjoying about this? Why do they like it? Right? I don't want to think that they're crazy. I want to think that there's something that they actually are looking at, that they like. You're saying they don't have a reference, and I think that is true. If they were to sit and listen to, let's just say, an EQ'd version.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you just EQ in that mid range, it's a totally different speaker.
They're picking the EQ'd one every time. I know that. Yeah. Right. I'm confident. I'll put my money on that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the research says, right? That people will prefer one that's neutral on axis and has a smooth directivity.
Yeah.
Right? People will choose that speaker. And the
different if it were like
more bass extension.
Yeah, it'd be different if it was like a 2 decibel trough in the mid range, but whatever that thing is, like 6 or so, like that's half as loud in the mid range.
Yeah. So. But I guess what I'm saying is that I don't know if there's a test that has been done, a test to see what happens if you get a bunch of speakers that are all neutral on axis, right, whether with EQ or not. Right? Probably easier with EQ. EQ a bunch of speakers, they're all have neutral on axis response, but the directivity is all over the place. You'll have one with smooth, garbage, and then see what do people like. Will they still prefer?
Yeah, Tool did that.
He did that exactly.
Yeah. If that's not in his book, that's definitely on one of the videos where he's at the college, the music college or whatever it is, CMRTT or something like that. Yeah, he talks about that because they're showing a speaker that has like good neutral on axis, and I think he was saying that people still didn't necessarily like it, and then they showed the sound power response, and it was like big dip in the crossover region, and they said so like that's when we realized that this other stuff matters. So it's kind of it's very interesting stuff.
So which one is more important between those two, though? Then you
depends on who you ask.
Would somebody prefer a speaker that is neutral on axis but has a bad directivity, or a speaker that has smooth directivity but a bad direct on axis response? That's going to be that's an important question.
Yeah. So it's, and I wish I could sum it up that easily, but we both know that there's things in between there. Like, so the first question is, well, how do you define bad on axis? Like what's bad? Is it just like one little peak here, or is it just doing a sawmill, right? Like, so that's the other thing. But just anecdotally, I understand what you're saying. And for me, I would say that I care more about smooth directivity. Like, it seems to be that I care more about smooth directivity, and I'm okay based on the data that I've seen and the speakers that I've heard. I'm okay with sacrificing some linearity on axis if that's what it takes to get smoother directivity or better in response. And the reason I say that is because I've also listened to enough of these speakers that have pretty smooth on-axis response, but the directivity is poor, so that crossover handover is really off. And they all almost sound the same way with respect to, like, they're very sibilant and they're very hot in the lower treble. And it stands out to me in a bad way.
Yeah. Well, for me, there's a selfish aspect to this also, because when something has smooth directivity, it's EQable.
Yeah,
and obviously I have a software that EQs speakers. And so if people are more focused on speakers that have good directivity, that means they're going to get more benefit from using Magic Beans than a speaker with poor directivity. So that's why I care, right?
No, I get it. But somebody else may not. You're right. Like, somebody else may not care about that same thing that you care about too.
But to me, I think that's very interesting, that something that has a bad response that is EQable there might be a preference toward that speaker even without EQ, is what's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's worthy of some kind of test if it hasn't already been done, to try to figure out what are the thresholds, because it seems like the threshold for direct seems like for normal people, they're willing to accept some pretty bad direct response.
Yeah.
Worse than I could. Yeah. I've tested these Eris. They sounded as bad as you said.
Yeah, but we also have experience. We have a pretty, even like with just that speaker and not comparing it back to back, we have a pretty good idea of what we should be hearing from a neutral speaker, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it just comes down to the average consumer that's paying $100 for a pair of desktop speakers probably doesn't care, first of all. If they do, they probably just don't have a good reference for that because they're starting off a $100 speaker.
Mhm.
Like, so if they're buying that, they probably don't have anything that's above that. Like, I guess, in other words, I would doubt that the guy who is buying that speaker also has a $5,000 set of speakers for his main listening speakers that are truly reference.
Mm.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody just needed a pair of speakers and they didn't care.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of going off of that.
I think the most important, I think we'll all agree, the best thing you could do, even if you don't have great speakers, is to get a sub.
Oh,
Get a sub. You know what I mean? Spend your money on a nice sub. Find a way to integrate it nicely. Upgrade your speakers later.
yeah.
But that'll be a nice upgrade for most people. I think for most people, if you have crappy speakers, at least get some good bass in your life and be happy.
Now, if you can't catch the show, we do have an audio version at anchor.fm/daily HiFi. So make sure to go on over there if you like to listen to the show.